So now we can create our function here. So let me go down here. Let's create space for a new function, like so. Okay, so remember that we are sending an object here. So I'll just say obj, like so. And then what I want to do is just a console.log. Console.log, so we can see what's really going on in that object. So object like this, and save. So now if I refresh and then I go to my console, okay, so we still having that error. This error is not part of us, so we can ignore it for now. Now if I click on one of these buttons here, click, oh, delete row is not defined. Okay, that's the wrong, I've clicked the wrong one. I should have clicked this one. Okay, there we go, because I haven't defined a function called delete row, only the edit row. So there we go. So now if you look at the result, your result is an object which has an event in there, and then it's got an ID as well, so which is very good. So that's one way of doing it. This is one way you can send data from an HTML element to a JavaScript function. But just to keep it clean and simple so you can easily remember these things, I will remove all this, just leave the event, and then I will create this. Now instead of using ID, because ID is reserved for more important things, right? So instead of ID, we can make something like raw ID or something. Let's use that, raw ID, just so we can make it different in case in future we want to use ID for something like styling or also. So raw ID is equal to that. So how do we get this information? So we can just look at the event and ask the target to get this raw ID. So let's do that just now. I'll go to categories there and say I will name the event E, and of course I don't need to console.log this. So all I'm going to say is ID, variable ID is equal to e.target, which is the element, and then .get attribute. So let's get an attribute here from there, and what will be the attribute name? It will be raw ID, like so. And then now at the bottom here, I'm just going to do a console.log, or let me just do an alert so we can clearly see what's going on, and ID, since it's just one item. So come back and refresh this, and the moment I click here, you will see, oh, that is no. So why is it no? e.target.get attribute raw ID. Okay, that looks legit. So why is it refusing? Okay, one moment here. So let's do an inspection here and see what's going on. Oh, I see what's happening. So this is why my earlier method I think is actually better. So what's happening here is that you see the button itself is the one that contains this raw ID is equal to 9. But remember that as we click on this button, we're actually clicking on the this I right here. Let me come back here and explain a little bit. So as you can see, there is this icon right there. This is the icon there. Okay, so this icon is contained inside a button. Now once I add an on-click listener to this event, which is the button is the main thing that contains the icon. So once you add it on the parent, even the children get an on-click listener. So if I click on this one, it will still activate this. But the problem is the event will be attached to the icon and not the button. So as a result, what will happen is that I'll be getting this instead. So in order for me to get the number, I would have to tell it to get the e.parent node, which is this one, the button itself. So let's see that in action. So if I just say parent node like so dot, so I'm saying the target, which is the icon, and then the parent node then get the attribute, which is row ID. So as you can see, this has become a little bit more complex than we would have loved, but you see that's the number there, which is 9. So I think maybe we should get in the habit of doing it the other way. So maybe let's go that way instead, because it's more precise. As long as the event has been triggered, whatever information will be here will always be accurate. So at least you've seen how to do it another way, but I think let's use this other method here. It's probably less complicated. So let's do this. And then let's do comma. Oh, actually, maybe we don't need to do this. Let me just put the thing there like so. So the row ID there. So let me come back to, so what I've done is I've just put 2 items, one item here, comma, and then a second item, because this is how functions get variables. So that's how you assign variables to functions. So let me come back here and let's see, we're just going, this is the event and this is the ID. So we can eliminate all this and just say alert ID. So let's see how that works. I'll refresh and then let's click on that and we get the same answer, 9. So I think we would agree that this is a better method here. So good to go. At least we still have our event there. So edit row, and that's the ID. So the only thing we need to do now is actually send the data. So this is why I had put this function as an independent function so that we can use it over and over again to do multiple things. So the only thing we need is to create our data and then send it. So we'll say send data like so. Copy that. Let me come back here. So right here, I'm going to say send data, but we are sending data as a, we are sending this object here. So we don't need to do equals to, we can just put the data right there. And let's create some items here. So first of all, we want to give it a data type. Now data type here is going to be, we'll just say, oh, this is edit row, right? Wait a minute. We'll want to do delete first before we are going to do edit. So I'll leave this as it is, but let me come back to the class and let's do exactly the same thing for the delete. I will copy that there and we are done. So come back to here. Let's create a new function. I'm just going to duplicate this one and change it to delete row like so. Everything else remains the same. So there we go. So delete row, that will be the data type, and then comma, the ID shall be equal to ID, and that's it. So we have this information and we're going to send it. Okie doke. So now when the handle result comes back, we're going to ask the message type, so message type is info, okay, which is good. Let's see what it's checking for, and then it shows us the message. Okay, so where was the, okay, so there's data and then there's a message that's being received. All right, so that is good. Now, if we come back to, let's go to our ajax.php, because we are now sending some data there. Okay, so if the data type, wait a minute, if the data type is add category, we go through here. But let's do an else statement now. Let me copy that, and I'm going to say else. We'll put an if statement here. So else if it's equal to delete row, like so, and then we're going to do whatever is in here. Now, there will be times when the user doesn't, maybe we forget to send the data type. So we don't want to have an error there. So what I will do is I'm just going to say if it's object data and is set. So let's use an is set there, this one. So if those are true, then we will go through here. So delete row. Now to delete a row is not a difficult thing. But before we do that, we need to ask the user if they really want to do this deletion. So let's come back to categories.php and let's do a simple query question mark here. So we're going to say the answer is equal to, and here I'm going to put a prompt to ask the user. I think the prompt is called confirm, if I'm not mistaken. So we're just going to ask, are you sure you want to delete this row? Question mark. So now this confirm returns true or false. So if, in fact, instead of doing all this, we're just going to say if here, because the result is either true or false. So if this, meaning it returns true, so once it returns true, so actually let's negate that by putting that. If the person says no, which means this will return false, then when we negate it, that will be true, so it will pass through here. So we'll say return, meaning we don't go to this part. Okay. Let me come back here again to the Ajax so that we can finish. Now, as you can see here, in the Ajax here, we return this. This is what we're returning. So I want to copy this format and put it here so that we return a similar kind of data for consistency. So if there was an error, obviously it will be in there, and session, okay, message type is going to be info, and then the data will be, okay, so let's create a message here. Actually, we don't need this. Wait a minute, we do need that. Okay, no, we actually do need all this. So let's see the message here. We're going to say your row was successfully deleted, something like that. So info, data, blah blah blah. Okay, so we're just going to return a message back. We're not going to actually delete anything, just a message back to see if things work. And then let's come back to our category here where there's handle result, so we can be able to handle that result. But I forgot to change the type. Okay, so message type. But there's one more thing we forgot here. Because we're going to be returning so many things, you know, there will be information that's returned for deleting, information that's returned for, so we might want to do different things for that kind of data so that we know what to do with the data, where to send the returned data, and so on. So what I will do is I will add one more thing here for all of these guys, and that one will be data type. So the data type in here is, let's just call it add new, because this is returned once we add a new row. So let's do that. And then here we will use data type delete row. Okay, and that's about it. So when we are deleting, we can either return info or an error. Okay, so I hope this actually makes sense. Now when we come back here, where is this? Categories. So let's imagine we've returned our information and then here excuse me, and then here we convert it to JSON, and then here we are checking if the type exists, message type, which I think it will all the time. So we just need to check. I think there's too many if statements, so we can reduce them. If type is equal to info, we should just make sure that always message type is there so we can avoid having to ask the question, because I want us to ask a more important question here, which is data type. So I will say here, if obj, let's go right there. Actually, maybe let's just do data type here. So if data type is good, then we can start asking the questions here. So I would do an if statement here and say if obj data type is equal to add new, then we are passing through here as we have already done. Let me duplicate that and move this internally like so. So if it's add new, we'll ask whether do we have info or we have an error, and then we'll show the error and so on. Okay, but we're going to change this a little bit, because remember we have those HTML designed messaging there are those message boxes that were designed nicely, so we're going to be using those. So this is only temporary. So at this point, if it's add new, we're going through here, but I've forgotten one opening tag there. Okay, good. And then we'll do an else statement there and say else like that, and then let's close it. So if the data type is delete row, then we'll do one thing here. So if it's delete row, I just want us to alert us to the message like so. So let's come back here and give it a test run. Let's refresh and make sure we are not losing sight of things. And let me click on delete, go to the console. Let's see what errors we got. So reference error, confirm is not defined. So I think I may have put an M where there should be an N. So let's try that. Let's go and click again. Okay, so there we go. So are you sure you want to delete this row? So if I say cancel, I don't get anything. But if I say okay, your row was successfully deleted, which is pretty good, which means things actually did go well. So in the next video, we're going to look at how to actually delete the row and refresh the data here. I'll see you in the next video.